Good morning everybody, Jason here. This is the 18th of July and it's 10:30 in the morning. We've come to see the Roman villa, or the excavation of the Roman villa at Brading. So we've seen it from afar previously, never seen it before, so it should be interesting. Presumably it's inside those buildings. This is a layout of the site. Behind us is where the bathhouse was. They've got it marked out like a path. And then this side here, away from in front of the sign leading up there, is the south range, the modern building over the west range, and then the north range over there presumably. So this excavation, I guess, illustrates the finest of the three building developments on this site that started not long after the Roman invasion in AD 43 and lasted for the next sort of more or less 400 years, 300-400 years. So this is one of the buildings. This is the example of the hypocaust system, the central heating system that the Romans had. So you had a void under the floor. Those top plates here would be what you would walk on, I guess. And then the hot air would go in between all those different pili. And then these things here are the ventilation system where the hot air would come out and vent the building. And you see some of the detail of the walls here, whereby they kind of built a bit like dry stone walls, where you have an inner and outer wall and then a void with small stuff filling the gaps. I think you can see it better on this one. On this site recently they've discovered that there's evidence of an extensive Iron Age settlement to the east of the villa complex that was in operation from about 50 BC until maybe 50 years or so after the Romans first got here. There's a little timeline there right back from the Mesolithic, 9 to 4,000 years ago, right up until the Roman rule AD 43 to about 410. And this panel sort of describes why they chose Brading on the island, why it was acceptable. There's basically good agricultural land and good land for grazing in between the agricultural seasons to refertilise the soil. The chalk downs, I think, provided a lot of water. And then this line sort of shows that this shows the settlements and the red triangles, and this is really where the Romans were in this middle line. There was another settlement up there which sort of bucks the pattern a little bit, but most of them were on that centre line. And another thing that's really interesting, I've got some pictures of a Northern Survey map showing this in more detail, but look at this area here. This is where the villa is that we're looking at today, and it was more or less right near the coast, because all this area here, which is now land, was all actually the sea, and then this part of the island was a separate island altogether. Interesting. Showing one of the mosaics. The guy was telling us that most of these rooms in this villa probably had mosaics originally, although some of them have been lost. And that's where we came in over here. And then this mosaic area is essentially the front of the villa. So this area in front of us here, where these windows are and where this curved room is, that would have been the entrance to the villa. And so this was the area that you'd first come into the villa. And this is in the middle, it depicts Orpheus. I'll try and get a picture from it. And then there's a little reenactment of the captain and workers who first exposed this as far back as 1880. And then this room, this area of the villa, was actually the first room to be discovered in 1880. The story was that a friend of the captain, that was an amateur archaeologist, the friend or family member, was putting in some posts for livestock, and he got so far in and then he couldn't get any further, and he got his friend the captain to come round, and they took the post out and they had a look in, the hole, and they saw this guy, this cockerel-headed guy, something that they were not really expecting. It was this was over a metre deep. It had been covered over the centuries, and that was the first thing. And they reckon that area there, where there's a few tesserae missing, roughly over where his heart would be, that was where the post went down. So this was just purely discovered by accident in 1880. And this whole mosaic is essentially a representation of Bacchus, the god of wine and celebration and having a good time. And here's a little depiction, a nice photograph, so you can see it all quite easily, of the Bacchus mosaic. And here we have Farman Munns and his family relation Captain Thorpe finding the cockerel-headed man after digging out a post hole when he couldn't drive a sheep post in. Here's a panel showing the development of the different parts of the site. So the South Range, the North Range, and then the Western Range, which is the building that we're in now. So the South Range probably dates back from around 100 AD, and that was just built a little bit away from the late Iron Age settlement that we're talking about earlier in the early Romano-British settlement. All constructed with timbers resting on stone, with a tiled roof. And then in about AD 200 they built the North Range, directly opposite. The South Range being dismantled and a new grander 44 metre by 15 metre long North Range built. The western end of that probably had a series of private rooms opening into an atrium, plastered and painted walls, mortar floors, and one room heated by a hypocaust. And the eastern half of that probably just a large hall used as a communal space for the management of the estate. And this is an artist's representation of the building that we're in now, the excavated villa, which is thought to have been completed by the early 4th century as a high status house, wing corridor villa, which was quite common in southern Britain, provided separate living accommodation for the owner and their family, together with space for entertaining guests. I'm standing here where the entrance to the villa would have been. Where we came in was over there. Not quite sure why they didn't use this entrance as the entrance, but you see the whole thing.
It's the 4th century now.
room 6 just to the right of the main entrance, and here you see a big hole in this mosaic which was probably put there towards the end of the 400 period to be used as a corn dryer, and they were used to dry wheat to make it ready for grinding for flour. And this here is room 12 on the right hand end, probably used for entertaining guests. Three or four big panels here. You can see there's two mermen holding steering oar and baskets of seafood, and a couple of tritons with nymphs on their tails. This big panel next to the maritime panel is the four seasons, with a pair of gods or goddesses on each panel here to represent the different seasons, and then these triangular panels are the winds, the four winds. The other side, that panel linking the two rooms, is an astronomer, which I think is some kind of status symbol indicating the owner had something to do with science. And then again, four seasons in the four corners of this main panel, and then this central panel. Well, a lot of it was damaged by tree roots, and so we don't have the mosaic. But this part here showing Perseus holding the head of Medusa after defeating her with his mirrored shield, turned her to stone. Got some of her own medicine, I guess. The side of the villa seems to have been used by the owner and his family, that being the threshold of the back door. And then this, I guess, it doesn't seem to say anywhere what this room is, but again, another room for their family. And then there's this room which is adjacent to, hedged in by this one, and room 12, which is where the great big intact mosaic is. This is a mystery room. There doesn't seem to be any door. During the Victorian excavation they never got down this far, but they excavated it more recently, and there doesn't appear to be any door in or out. So quite what this room was, who knows? It's kind of interesting. It shows a sort of theoretical way which a villa as important as this could become derelict and destroyed and covered up and forgotten about. So after about 10-12 years the wood starts to go. 20 to 50 years the roof and the wooden structure is falling to pieces. Then you get the growth of vegetation on the structure, and that lays down layers of soil, and after 100 to 300 years mature trees, annual fall of leaves produce even thicker mulch, and then 300 to 400 years maybe you get coppice woodsman, Saxon coppice woodsman using it as a coppice wood, and then agricultural use over the years since then, and it's just buried and forgotten. There's a display of the different kinds of floor tiles and roof tiles that the Romans manufactured to cover their buildings, but they also used these, which are stone tiles from Devon. I think they reckon that this stone came from Devon. And that's a close-up of those stones with a hole in it where they could drive the nails in. Some of the nails that they used. And then this is pretty cool. This is one of the tesserae that was used as one of the capstones. You can see someone left a handprint in it. And here's another one, and on this one, you see the toe prints? See the footprint on this one? Footprint with the toes.